The Millionaire CEO hadn't smiled in 20 years until he heard the new secretary's song. Before we start the story, leave a comment letting us know what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. If the cat wants to vote, meow meow. If the mouse is gonna win, squeak squeak. Clara Bennett was humming her new hit, Funky Candidate Cat, swaying slightly in her office chair while stacking papers and using a stapler as a microphone. The workday was already over, and the building was pretty much empty. At least, that's what Clara thought. Wearing a blazer one size too big and shoes that made a click-clack sound with every step, she was performing with heart. She even did the choreography, which included a dramatic meow, a Broadway-worthy head toss, and an awkward little hip shake. But behind her, someone had shown up at the office door. It was Leonardo Reed, the company's CEO, the most feared man, respected, expressionless, who never smiled. And there he was, watching that performance like he'd just seen an alien during prime time. Clara, unaware of her VIP audience, kept going. Vote for the cat, he's the king of ethics, he meows in the Senate, he's just fantastic. Leonardo crossed his arms, still holding the folder he came back to retrieve. For a second, just 1 second, the stiffness in his face faded. The corner of his mouth curved up, almost invisible. But real. He smiled, for the first time in 20 years, a phenomenon rarer than a solar eclipse in a leap year that falls on a Friday holiday. Clara, turning with a dramatic spin, came face to face with him. The scream echoed. She dropped a pile of folders, tripped over the swivel chair, hit her knee on the desk, and in the panic dropped her purse on the floor, spilling lipsticks, gum, and a tiny rubber duck. "My ninja boss, did you teleport here?" Leonardo cleared his throat, but his mouth was twitching. He was clearly trying not to laugh. "I just came back for a document I forgot," he said, voice steady, but his eyes betrayed the chaos within. Clara, trying to keep some dignity while picking up the duck. "I swear this song has social depth. It's about feline representation in politics. You know?" Leonardo raised an eyebrow. Clara stood up, adjusting the blazer that had its zipper stuck in her pantyhose. "Wait a second," she squinted, staring at his face like she was examining a valuable painting. "That was a smile, wasn't it?" "It was, right? I saw it. Can I call the New York Times?" Leonardo looked away, returning to his serious posture. "Do you always sing that when you think no one's watching?" Clara shrugged, still out of breath. "Only when I'm really happy, or really tired, or slightly low on blood sugar." She held out the documents to him, but dropped half of them again in the process. Leonardo bent down to help, and for a moment their eyes met. The silence wasn't as awkward as it should have been. "Is your shift over, Miss Clara?" She scrambled to pick up the scattered papers, her face still flushed. "Technically, yes. But you know how it is. First week, I want to show dedication, and a sense of humor. Maybe too much." Leonardo watched her a second longer than necessary, then took the folder, turned to leave, and said, "Have a good evening, Miss Candidate Cat." "Good night, boss." Clara stood there, holding the rubber duck in her hand, eyes wide and heart pounding. She ran to the window and watched Leonardo step into the elevator. He smiled. "I saw it. That's worth a prize." "A bonus? Maybe a raise?" she muttered to herself. Inside the elevator, Leonardo stood still, staring at his reflection in the mirrored doors. Slowly, the corner of his mouth turned up again. A little smile. The security guard in the corner of the elevator choked on his own spit. "Mr. Reed, did you just smile?" Leonardo didn't answer, but the smile, now full, lasted all the way to the ground floor. Meanwhile, Clara was tidying up the mess in the office, murmuring, "Congrats, Clara. You just sang a funky political cat song in front of the scariest man in the building. If I still have a badge tomorrow, I'll consider it a win." "Ha! But hey, I started with a disaster, followed up with a political meow, and ended up making the boss laugh." She started humming again, this time dancing with the rubber duck in her hand. "Vote for the cat. He's the king of ethics. He meows in the Senate. He's just fantastic." And back in the elevator, Leonardo was still trying to make sense of what exactly had happened in that office. But one thing was clear. After 20 years, something inside him had started to change. The next morning, Clara arrived at the office like a detective on a secret mission. She had a small notepad in her purse with the title, Operation Big Smile, Step 1, confirm if it was real. Step 2. Repeat the miracle. In the company cafeteria, she sat down with Jessica from accounting and Robert from marketing. "Guys, you're not going to believe what happened yesterday," Clara announced, stirring her coffee with a plastic spoon that made an annoying sound. "Let me guess," Jessica said, biting into a muffin. "You found out the coffee from the machine is made of chalk dust?" "No, even better. I made Mr. Reed smile." Robert nearly choked on his orange juice. "Clara, sweetie, did you hit your head?" Leonardo Reed wouldn't smile even if he won the lottery. "I saw it with these two eyes that'll one day be 6 feet under," Clara insisted, pointing dramatically at her own eyes. It was a small smile, but a real one. "Grade A. Certified. Teeth showing and everything." Jessica shook her head. "Honey, I've worked here for 5 years. I've seen that man in meetings, presentations, even at a Christmas party. His face never changes. It's like he's made of marble." "Expensive marble," Robert added. "The kind that costs more than my apartment." Clara slammed her hand on the table, making the trays bounce. "Exactly. That's why this was historic. I have to make it happen again. You know, for science." Her two coworkers exchanged amused looks. "And how do you plan to do that?" Jessica asked. Clara smiled with the glow of someone who just discovered the cure for corporate boredom. "With the same song that worked yesterday, the funky candidate cat." "What?" Robert frowned. "A Brazilian musical masterpiece, adapted to American reality. You'll see." After lunch, Clara began her campaign. First test, the elevator. When the doors closed with her and 3 other employees inside, Clara began discreetly. "Vote for the cat. He's the king of ethics. He meows in the Senate. He's just fantastic." The others looked at her as if she'd just announced aliens had landed in Central Park. "Sorry, it's a relaxation technique," Clara improvised, smiling nervously. On the 10th floor, the doors opened and Leonardo stepped in. Clara nearly choked on her own saliva. He greeted everyone with a polite nod and turned his back to her. Clara took a deep breath and whispered barely audibly, "If the cat wants to vote, meow. Meow." Leonardo's right eyebrow twitched slightly, just slightly, but Clara saw it. Bingo, she thought, trying not to jump with joy inside the elevator. When they reached the 20th floor, Leonardo walked out without looking back, but Clara could swear she saw him shake his head slightly, like someone trying to brush off a stubborn thought. Second test. Near the printer. Clara was copying some reports when she saw Leonardo walking down the hallway. She pretended to focus on the documents and began humming softly. "If the mouse is gonna win, squeak, squeak." Leonardo slowed his pace, just for a fraction of a second. Clara held back a laugh. It was working. The third test was an accident. Clara walked into the ladies' room humming the song, not realizing she had left the door slightly open. Outside, Leonardo happened to be walking by on his way to a meeting. "Vote for the cat. He's the king of ethics. He meows in the Senate. He's just fantastic." Clara's voice echoed through the empty hallway. Leonardo stopped in his tracks. He looked around, making sure he was alone, and then a tiny smile appeared on his lips. He shook his head, as if trying to pull himself together, and continued on to his meeting. Clara stepped out of the restroom and nearly bumped into Sarah from reception. "Were you singing in the bathroom?" Sarah asked, confused. It's a new therapy. Very effective for stress," Clara lied, blushing. At 3 p.m., chaos broke out in the office. Margaret, Leonardo's executive assistant, ran down the halls like the building was on fire. "Emergency! Emergency!" Margaret shouted, waving her arms as she rushed through the hallway. Clara and a few other employees gathered around her. "What happened?" Jessica asked. "The Japanese investor arrived early. The meeting that was supposed to be tomorrow is happening today, in 1 hour, and our official interpreter just called. She has food poisoning." Robert gave a low whistle. "That's serious. Mr. Reed's been waiting on this investor for months." Margaret looked around, clearly panicking. "Does anyone here speak Japanese? Anything at all?" Total silence. Clara timidly raised her hand. "I know how to say arigato and sayonara. Does that count?" Margaret looked at her like she was the last life raft on the Titanic. "You'll have to do. Come with me." 5 minutes later, Clara stood in front of Leonardo's office door as Margaret knocked frantically. "Come in," came the firm voice of the CEO. Margaret shoved Clara into the luxurious office. "Mr. Reed, we've found a temporary solution for the interpreter issue." Leonardo looked up from his papers and saw Clara standing there like a lost penguin in the desert. "Clara?" He frowned. "She speaks Japanese." Margaret lied without hesitation and can pose as your experienced personal assistant. It'll give the company more credibility. Leonardo looked at Clara, then at Margaret, then back at Clara again. "You speak Japanese?" he asked, clearly doubtful. "Well," Clara swallowed hard, "I know how to say hello and goodbye, and I can apologize, which will probably come in handy." Leonardo rubbed his face, clearly regretting everything about the moment. "The investor arrives in 50 minutes. "Great. I'm so doomed," Clara muttered, starting to panic. Leonardo sighed deeply, like a man realizing he was about to skydive with no training. "Just smile and take notes, or at least try to," he said, already visibly regretting his own words. Clara's eyes widened, processing the instruction. "Take notes or smile? Because doing both at once, boss, is multitasking on another level." And there it was again. The barely noticeable movement at the corner of Leonardo's mouth. He quickly covered it with a cough and looked back down at his documents. "Margaret, get Clara a proper blazer. She has 40 minutes to turn into a convincing personal assistant." Margaret dragged Clara out of the office. "Come on, sweetheart. We've got a miracle to perform." As she was being pulled down the hallway, Clara muttered to herself. From new secretary to fake interpreter and assistant in 24 hours. If this isn't career growth, I don't know what is. Back in the office, Leonardo was alone, flipping through papers. For the third time in 2 days, a stubborn smile tried to sneak across his face as he remembered Clara's words. He shook his head, trying to focus on the fast-approaching meeting. 40 minutes later, Clara was unrecognizable. Margaret had pulled off a miracle. A navy blue suit that almost fit, heels that only pinched a little, and even a pair of fake glasses to give her a more intellectual vibe. "Remember," Margaret whispered as she straightened Clara's blazer, "keep your posture upright. Speak softly, and for the love of everything holy, don't sing." Clara nodded nervously and headed toward the conference room, where Leonardo was already waiting. He looked her up and down, clearly impressed by the transformation, but kept his face neutral. "Ready?" he asked, adjusting his tie. "Define ready," Clara replied, trying to walk gracefully in the borrowed shoes. "Because if you mean completely lost but willing to try, then yes." Leonardo sighed and opened the conference room door. The Japanese investor, Mr. Hiroshi Tanaka, was already seated, flanked by 2 assistants. He was a middle-aged man, impeccably dressed, with a serious expression that made Leonardo look like a stand-up comedian. "Mr. Tanaka." Leonardo bowed respectfully. "It's an honor to have you here." He pulled out his phone, opened a translation app, and quickly typed. The phone spoke in a robotic Japanese voice, making Mr. Tanaka raise an eyebrow. Clara stepped forward, trying not to trip over the projector cable. "This is my personal assistant, Clara Bennett," Leonardo said into the translator. The app translated it into something that sounded like, "This is my personal banana, Clara Bennett." Mr. Tanaka blinked several times, visibly confused. Leonardo quickly typed a correction. "I apologize for not having a professional interpreter. Clara is my assistant and knows a few Japanese words that might help with communication." This time, the app said something about experienced cats and magical Japanese words. Clara decided it was time to step in. She bowed politely and said, "Arigato gozaimasu." Mr. Tanaka smiled for the first time, clearly touched and surprised by the effort. "Ah, you speak Japanese," he replied in heavily accented English. Clara's eyes widened. He spoke English. All that drama with the translator, for nothing. "Just a tiny bit," she lied, holding up her pinky. "Like teeny tiny." Leonardo shot her a glare but motioned for everyone to sit down. The meeting officially began. Leonardo presented the company's numbers, while Clara pretended to take important notes. In reality, she was doodling little cats in the margins of the official document and writing her grocery list. "Our company grew 30% over the last year," Leonardo explained. Clara nodded enthusiastically as if mentally translating, but she was really wondering if she should buy whole milk or skim. "Impressive," Mr. Tanaka commented. Clara perked up. "Yes, very impressive." Clara agreed, clapping her hands enthusiastically. Leonardo looked at her with a mix of horror and disbelief. 15 minutes later, Clara got up to serve coffee. It was a simple task. Grab the tray and hand out the cups. But Clara had a unique talent for making simple things complicated. First, she tripped over the laptop cable, making the screen wobble. Then, she mixed up the drinks, giving espresso to someone who asked for decaf and green tea to Leonardo, who hadn't asked for anything at all. "Sorry," she mumbled, trying to fix the mix-up only to spill sugar onto the investor's folder. But instead of getting upset, Mr. Tanaka started to laugh. "You are very, how you say, authentic. Very different from assistants I know." Clara smiled, unsure if it was a compliment or a critique. "I'm definitely one of a kind, hopefully in a good way." While Leonardo talked about market projections, Clara continued making her special notes. Instead of writing on the official minutes, she was doodling on the back of an important contract, sketching a comic strip about business cats. Mr. Tanaka noticed and leaned over to look. "Is this a cat in a suit?" Clara blushed. Yes. A visual metaphor for feline leadership in the corporate world." The investor burst into laughter. "Brilliant. You Americans are so creative." Leonardo watched the scene, unsure whether to laugh or cry. But his eyes were shining in a way he didn't recognize. It was pure amusement. As the meeting went on, Clara relaxed and started being herself. She asked silly questions that led to interesting answers, told a joke about cultural differences that made the investor laugh until he cried, and even did a tiny dance when Leonardo mentioned market movement. "This is the most entertaining meeting I've ever had," declared Mr. Tanaka, wiping his eyes. "You have made my day very special." When Leonardo finally got to the key point, the investment proposal, Clara decided it was time for a toast. She picked up the leftover orange juice from the snack tray and raised her glass. "A toast to our future partnership." Mr. Tanaka loved the idea and lifted his cup of tea. "To the future," said Leonardo, raising his glass of water. "To mutual success," added the investor. Clara, caught up in the moment, blurted out, "Merci beaucoup, samurai." Everyone froze. 3 long seconds of silence. Then Mr. Tanaka burst into laughter so loud the receptionist on the floor below probably heard it. "Merci beaucoup, samurai," he repeated, slapping the table. "That is fantastic. French and Japanese together. International." He turned to Leonardo. "Mr. Reed, I accept the proposal. This company has something special. You have energy, have fun, are different. This is exactly what my company needs." Leonardo blinked several times trying to process what had just happened. "Serious?" Clara asked, momentarily forgetting to use formal English. "Very serious," confirmed Mr. Tanaka, still laughing. "Clara-san, you are a wonderful surprise." After Mr. Tanaka and his assistants left, still laughing and chatting about the most entertaining meeting of their lives, Leonardo and Clara were left alone in the room. Leonardo watched her in silence for a long moment. Clara was trying to organize the doodled-on papers, nervously biting her lip. "I kind of ruined everything, didn't I?" she murmured. "You just closed the biggest deal in this company's history," Leonardo replied slowly, "using French, drawing cats, and toasting with orange juice." Clara stared at him. "Is that good or bad?" Leonardo shook his head, as if confused by his own thoughts. "You don't follow any rules, but somehow everything works out with you." In the elevator heading down to the parking garage, Leonardo finally broke the silence. "You'll continue accompanying me as my personal assistant. We have another event tonight." Clara looked at him. "Oh, so now this is corporate theater? Will there be costumes?" Leonardo gave her his usual impatient look without answering. But Clara could swear, once again, she saw that barely there movement at the corner of his mouth. The elevator reached the parking level, and Clara couldn't help but wonder what kind of adventure she was getting herself into this time. 6 hours later, Clara was standing in front of the mirror in the ladies' room of a fancy dress boutique, questioning every life choice she had ever made. "This isn't a dress. It's a trap," she muttered, trying to breathe in the teal-blue gown she had rented for a price that seriously endangered her monthly budget. Jessica's borrowed heels were making her feet scream for mercy, and the makeup she had done herself made her look like she was trying to enter a witness protection program. Leonardo was waiting in the lobby of the Plaza Hotel, immaculate in his black tuxedo. When Clara appeared at the top of the marble staircase, trying not to trip, he was speechless for a few seconds. "You look," he began. "Ridiculous?" Clara cut in, adjusting the dress for the 10th time. "I was going to say beautiful, but ridiculous works too," he replied, and Clara couldn't tell if that was a compliment or an insult. The ballroom was filled with New York's elite. Women wore jewelry worth more than cars, chatting with men whose watches were worth entire apartments. Clara glanced around and whispered, "I feel like a microwave pizza at a French banquet." Leonardo almost smiled but held back. "Just smile and be yourself." It worked with the Japanese investor. "Being myself is exactly what got me here," Clara muttered, grabbing a champagne flute from a passing tray. The first hour was a parade of awkward introductions. Clara greeted billionaires like they were neighbors from her apartment building and answered questions about contemporary art with comments about cartoons. "And you, dear, what do you think of Morrison's recent work?" asked a platinum-haired lady wearing a pearl necklace. Clara was chewing on a salmon canapé like it was a fried chicken snack. "Oh, I prefer the classics, really. Tom and Jerry never go out of style." The woman blinked, confused, but Leonardo quickly redirected the conversation. Later, Clara was chatting with a group when she spotted a gray-mustached gentleman loudly bragging about his yachts. "I have 3 vessels, you know? One in France, another in the Bahamas." Clara interrupted innocently. "Wow, Mr. Mustache, you must spend more time at sea than a pirate." The man turned red, people around them choked on their drinks, and Leonardo had to fake a coughing fit to cover up his laugh. "It's Mr. Henderson," the man corrected, clearly offended. "Sorry, Mr. Henderson Mustache," Clara replied sincerely, not understanding what she'd done wrong. Leonardo quickly pulled her to the other side of the ballroom. "Clara, you can't just go around giving nicknames like Mr. Mustache to billionaire moguls." "But he has a mustache," she protested. "And a very nice one, by the way. I meant it as a compliment." That's when the night took an unexpected turn. A stunning woman in a red dress that definitely cost more than Clara's entire car walked up with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Leonardo, darling," she said in a silky voice that sounded like poisoned honey. Clara immediately saw Leonardo's body tense up. "Victoria," he responded, stiffly. Victoria was everything Clara wasn't. Tall, elegant, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a posture that screamed, "I belong here." Her icy blue eyes scanned Clara from head to toe like she was appraising a second-hand item. "And who is this little creature?" Victoria asked, with a fake smile. "Clara Bennett, my assistant," Leonardo answered rigidly. "Oh, how cute," Victoria chuckled, but it wasn't a warm laugh. Leonardo has always had a soft spot for unusual employees. Clara felt her blood boil. Unusual as in not being fake from their nails to their personality? Victoria's smile faltered for a split second, then quickly returned. "Leonardo, darling, we need to talk. Alone." She completely ignored Clara and grabbed Leonardo's arm possessively. "I'm sure you're tired of this rebellious phase. Why don't we go back to what we had? We were perfect together." Leonardo looked at Clara, then at Victoria, clearly uncomfortable. Clara could see the panic building behind his eyes. And then he did something completely unexpected. "Actually, Victoria, I'm engaged." The entire ballroom seemed to go silent. Victoria's eyes widened, and Clara nearly dropped her champagne glass. "Engaged?" Victoria repeated, stunned. "To who?" Leonardo took a deep breath and looked straight at Clara. "To Clara." Clara choked spectacularly on the champagne, coughing so hard that half the room turned to look. "What?" she managed to exclaim between coughs. Leonardo quickly grabbed her hand and forced a smile, one that almost looked romantic, if Clara didn't already know his usual stone-faced expression. She stared at him, eyes wide. The whole world felt frozen in that moment. Victoria was pale as a sheet, and Clara could hear whispers spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. "How much is this going to cost me?" Clara muttered through a clenched smile. "Because I charge a lot to fake love in public." Leonardo squeezed her hand tighter. "Whatever it takes, please." Clara glanced around. All those rich, powerful people were staring at her like she was some rare zoo animal. Victoria looked like she was silently plotting an elaborate revenge. And then Clara did what she did best. She improvised. She turned to Victoria with a sweet smile. "Sorry, Victoria, is that right? You'll have to find another ex to win back. This one's already taken." Victoria stood there, mouth agape. Around them, New York's elite murmured with excitement, watching the drama unfold like a live soap opera. "This is ridiculous," Victoria snapped, regaining composure. "You two barely know each other. Love doesn't have a stopwatch, sweetheart." Clara replied, fully stepping into the role. Sometimes it strikes out of nowhere, like lightning. Leonardo looked at her with a mix of terror and admiration. Just then, a man with a professional camera approached. "Mr. Reed, I'm with New York Social. Can we get a comment on the engagement?" Before Leonardo could say anything, Clara stepped forward with the confidence of a red carpet veteran. "Of course, we're very happy. Leonardo is a wonderful man, even if his taste in music is questionable." The reporter scribbled frantically in his notepad. "And when's the wedding?" Clara glanced at Leonardo, who looked like he was mentally calculating the cost of fleeing the country. "Soon," he said, his voice slightly strangled. The next morning, the gossip was everywhere. Magazine covers, celebrity blogs, news feeds. Lonely CEO announces surprise engagement to exotic secretary. Clara woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop. She groaned and opened the first headline she saw. There it was, a photo of her and Leonardo holding hands. She looked completely shocked, and he looked like he'd swallowed an entire lemon. "Exotic secretary," she read aloud. Well, at least they didn't say weird. Her phone rang again. "Leonardo," she answered. "Clara, we need to talk. Urgently." 1 hour later, Clara was sitting in Leonardo's office, staring at a pile of newspapers and magazines spread across his desk. Every cover featured some variation of the same headline, Whirlwind Romance, Corporate Cinderella, and her personal favorite, Mysterious CEO Finally Finds Love with Hilarious Employee. "Hilarious," Clara said, picking up the magazine and waving it. "At least they recognized my comedic talent." Leonardo stood by the window, looking down at the swarm of photographers camped out on the sidewalk in front of the building. 17 paparazzi, he muttered. 17 people, with professional cameras, waiting to document our every move. Clara joined him at the window and gave the photographers a cheerful wave. The flashes started immediately. "Clara," Leonardo pulled her away from the window. "Don't do that." "Why not? They seem nice." That one even smiled back. Leonardo ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Clara was starting to recognize as his maximum stress indicator. "We need to talk about this," he said, motioning vaguely to the magazines. Clara sat in the chair across from his desk and crossed her legs. "All right, boss. Talk. The situation is out of control, but..." He hesitated. "Maybe it's not entirely bad." "What do you mean?" Leonardo sat down behind the desk and clasped his hands. "The board is thrilled. Our public image has never looked better. Stock went up 3% just this morning." Clara nodded slowly. "Go on." "And there's an important deal in progress with Morrison & Associates. They're a traditional family-owned company. They value strong personal relationships. A 35-year-old bachelor CEO made them question my stability." Clara started to see where this was going. "You want me to keep pretending to be your fiancé for a limited time, just until we close the deal?" Clara leaned back in the chair, studying his face. "And what do I get out of this?" Leonardo blinked, clearly not expecting her to negotiate. "What do you mean? What do you get?" "Leonardo, darling," Clara said in a sweet tone that fooled absolutely no one. "Pretending to be madly in love with someone who has the emotional range of an ironing board is hard work. I deserve compensation." He stared at her for a long moment. "What kind of compensation?" Clara flashed a smile that would make any salesperson proud. "First, a raise, 20%. 10, Leonardo replied instantly. 15. Second, extra time off, every Friday afternoon. Impossible. Then every Monday morning. Leonardo sighed. Fine. Third, car service for all public events. My feet still haven't recovered from those heels yesterday. Accepted. Fourth, chocolate in the office. The good kind, not those vending machine bars that taste like sweetened cardboard. Leonardo looked genuinely confused. Chocolate? Swiss chocolate or Belgian, your choice. Why chocolate? Because pretending to be in love makes me hungry. And hungry me is cranky me. And trust me, you don't want me cranky during this whole charade. Leonardo paused, considering. Fine. Anything else? That's it for now. But I reserve the right to renegotiate if this situation gets messier. They shook hands, sealing the most surreal agreement either of them had ever made. 2 hours later, Clara was already discovering that being a fake fiancé was surprisingly hard work. The phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests, event invitations, and even reality show offers. Reality show? Clara repeated to Margaret, who was jotting down all the inquiries. Love in the workplace. Margaret read from a piece of paper. They want to follow you two around the office with cameras. Absolutely not, said Leonardo, appearing in the doorway. Clara looked at him, curious. Could be fun. Picture it. Tonight on Love in the Workplace, will the CEO smile during the budget meeting? Leonardo ignored her and turned to Margaret. Accept only relevant corporate invitations that align with our business goals. Later that week, during a high-stakes meeting with potential investors from Morrison & Associates, Clara realized her presence had an unexpected effect on business. The meeting was tense. The three Morrison executives, serious, middle-aged men, sat stiffly around the table, clearly unimpressed by Leonardo's technical presentation. Mr. Reed, said the eldest Richard Morrison, your numbers are impressive, but we have some concerns about your company culture. Leonardo braced himself for a dry debate about corporate policies. But then Clara, seated beside him and pretending to take notes, more likely doodling cats again, let out a small, adorable sneeze. Excuse me, she said, grabbing a tissue. Bless you, Richard replied automatically. Thank you. Sorry, I think I'm allergic to excessive formality. The executives blinked, surprised. How do you mean? One of them asked. Clara glanced at Leonardo, who shot her a please not now look. But she had already made up her mind. Well, you've been here an hour talking about charts and spreadsheets, but no one's asked once about the people who work here. Leonardo might come off a bit robotic, she gave him a playful pat on the arm, but he truly cares about his employees. Clara. Leonardo muttered, but Richard looked intrigued. Go on. The other day, he found out the receptionist's daughter was in the hospital. He paid for all the medical bills. Didn't tell a soul. But I found out, because I'm nosy and poke around where I probably shouldn't. Leonardo stared at her in genuine surprise. He hadn't known she knew. And there's more, Clara went on, excited. He changed the entire maternity leave policy after one employee had to come back way too early after giving birth. Now moms get 6 months of paid leave. The Morrison executives exchanged looks. That wasn't in our report, Richard said, raising an eyebrow. Clara shrugged. Leonardo's modest. He does good and hides it, like a superhero in a suit. One of the executives chuckled. A superhero in a suit? Exactly. He fights corporate injustice and protects innocent employees. Clara gestured dramatically. The only difference is, instead of a cape, he wears expensive ties. The whole room was laughing now, including Richard Morrison, who Clara wasn't even sure knew how to smile. Miss Bennet, Richard said, straightening his posture. Your perspective on Mr. Reed is refreshing. Oh, I have plenty more where that came from. I could tell you about the time he stayed up all night helping the IT team fix a system crash, or when he… Clara, Leonardo cut in gently. I think they get the idea. Richard stood and extended his hand. Mr. Reed, consider the deal done. A company that inspires this kind of loyalty and fun is exactly what we're looking for. After the investors left, Leonardo and Clara were alone in the conference room. You knew about Sarah? Leonardo asked quietly. About the medical bills? Clara blushed slightly. I may overhear a little too much and ask a little too little, but it was really kind of you. Leonardo looked at her for a long moment, as if he was seeing her in a completely new way. You just closed a $10 million deal by making me sound like a superhero in a suit. Technically, you are the superhero. I just translated it into human language. Leonardo shook his head, still trying to process everything. Think you can keep pretending for another month? We've got more key meetings coming up, and apparently you have a positive effect on business. Clara crossed her arms and looked him straight in the eyes. Does that include dinners, romantic photos, and letting me change the playlist in your car? Because all that classical music is putting me into a light depression. Leonardo hesitated. I'll consider it. And chocolate. Lots of chocolate. We already agreed on the chocolate. At that moment, Margaret appeared at the door, breathless. Mr. Reed, Manhattan Elite magazine wants to do a cover story on you two. Full photo shoot and interview on love in the corporate world. Clara turned to Leonardo. Romantic photo shoot? That's definitely worth double chocolate. Fine, he sighed, but no cat songs during the interview. Clara grinned. I promise nothing. The next morning, Clara woke up to the annoying sound of her alarm and the unmistakable chaos of photographers shouting her name outside the building. Clara! Clara! Over here! She peeked through the curtain and saw at least 10 paparazzi camped out on the sidewalk. Seriously, don't you people have homes? Clara muttered, quickly shutting the curtain. 2 hours later, she was at the Manhattan Elite magazine studio, being styled, brushed, powdered, and dressed like a luxury doll. The chosen dress was a soft, elegant baby blue that made her nearly unrecognizable. Her hair had been transformed into a cascade of soft curls. "You look stunning," said Patricia, the makeup artist. "Ready to conquer the world." Clara looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. "I'm pretty sure this version of me could actually speak fluent Japanese." Leonardo arrived at the studio 10 minutes later, as flawless as always. But Clara noticed a new kind of tension in his shoulders. "Nervous?" she asked, adjusting his tie in a gesture that had become oddly natural. "No," he lied, avoiding her eyes. The photographer, a dramatic man named Alessandro, greeted them with open arms. "There they are, the lovebirds." "You're even more gorgeous in person," Clara whispered to Leonardo. "He sounds like a children's show host on too much caffeine." Alessandro positioned them in front of a sleek, minimalistic white backdrop. "Perfect. Now I want natural. Love, passion. Pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist." Clara looked at Leonardo. "Pretend I'm holding Swiss chocolate. That should help." Leonardo almost smiled, but held it in. The shoot began with basic poses. Hands clasped, dreamy gazes, radiant smiles. Clara discovered she had a talent for this, tossing out jokes between shots that even made Leonardo relax. "Beautiful. Perfect," Alessandro shouted. "Now, closer." "That's it, Leonardo." Hand on her cheek. "Clara, look at him like he's the last slice of pizza on earth." "That I can do," Clara murmured, making Leonardo let out a genuine laugh, which the camera captured perfectly. As the session went on, Alessandro became more demanding. "I need more chemistry. More intensity. You're in love. Show it." Clara and Leonardo exchanged a look. They both knew they were pretending, but there was something in the air, a tension neither of them could quite define. "How about a little dance?" Alessandro suggested. "Something romantic, intimate?" A soft instrumental song began to play. Leonardo hesitated, then offered his hand. Clara took it, and they began to move slowly, smoothly. "You dance well," Clara murmured, a little surprised. "Mandatory childhood lessons," he replied. "My mother insisted. Mine insisted I learn how to change a tire. Different priorities." Leonardo chuckled quietly, and Clara felt a strange flutter in her stomach. It wasn't hunger. "Perfect, perfect," Alessandro exclaimed, snapping photos wildly. "But I need more. More passion? More kiss, maybe?" Clara felt Leonardo's body tense immediately. "Kiss?" she repeated, her voice slightly higher than usual. "Just a little kiss," Alessandro insisted. "For the cover, it'll be iconic." Clara looked at Leonardo, who seemed to be mentally calculating if he could dig a tunnel out of the studio. "It doesn't have to be a real kiss," she whispered. "Just lips touching, like in theater." Leonardo nodded stiffly. "Like in theater." They got into position. Leonardo gently placed his hands on Clara's face. She closed her eyes, mentally bracing for a stage kiss. But fate, clearly in a humorous mood, had other plans. Just as they leaned in, Clara stepped on the edge of the ornate Persian rug that decorated the studio. Her heel caught, and she lost her balance completely, flying toward Leonardo like a runaway missile. He tried to catch her, but the impact threw them both off. Clara slammed into his chest, and in their awkward attempt to stay upright, their lips met. Not a soft stage kiss, a real, full, accidental kiss. The camera's flash went off automatically. For 2 seconds that felt like forever. They stood like that, Clara in Leonardo's arms, both too shocked to move. "Oh my God," Alessandro screamed. "That was perfect. Pure magic. The corporate kiss of the century." The entire studio staff started clapping and cheering like they just witnessed a miracle. Clara and Leonardo quickly pulled apart, both flushed and visibly uncomfortable. "That was," Leonardo started. "An accident," Clara cut in fast. "Total accident. Blame the rug." "Accident." Alessandro looked genuinely offended. "That was art. You two have real chemistry." In the following days, the photo went viral. The magazine broke sales records, and the image of Clara falling into Leonardo's arms spread across the internet like wildfire. The memes came fast. The secretary who took down the CEO with love. When you trip and fall into your destiny. Tutorial: how to land a millionaire CEO in 3 easy steps. Clara was in the office, scrolling through the comments on her phone, when Leonardo walked in, looking visibly rattled. "Did you see this?" he asked, holding up his phone. "I saw. We're famous," Clara replied, trying to sound casual. At least now we have chemistry. Just need the periodic table to go with it. Leonardo didn't laugh. He was pacing across the office like a caged animal. This is completely out of control. Leonardo, relax. It's just a photo. In a week, no one will even remember. As if the universe couldn't resist the chance to prove her wrong, Margaret appeared at the door holding an elegant envelope. Mr. Reed, this just came in. A very important invitation. Leonardo opened the envelope, and his expression grew even more tense. What is it? Clara asked. The annual Reed family ball, he said, his voice tight. My parents want to meet my future wife. Clara felt her stomach drop. Your parents? As in the people who created you? Exactly. She took the invitation from his hands and read aloud. Cordially invites Clara Bennett, future Mrs. Reed. She stopped. Mrs. Reed? Well, that escalated quickly. Leonardo sank into his chair. The ball is next Saturday, at the family mansion. Every Reed will be there, along with half of New York's elite major investors. And the press? Definitely. Clara looked at the golden embossed card, then at Leonardo, who looked like he was having a silent existential crisis. So, I'm going to meet your parents pretending to be your fiancé at a gala, surrounded by rich and powerful people, while photographers document our every move? Basically. Clara sat in the chair across from him. This definitely calls for triple chocolate, and a crash course in etiquette, and maybe therapy afterward. Leonardo finally looked at her. Do you still want to go through with this? Clara thought about the accidental kiss, the weird flutter still in her stomach, the viral memes, and the absolute absurdity of it all. Of course, she said, surprising even herself. But you're going to owe me way more than chocolate after this. Leonardo nodded, both relieved and terrified. Anything. Careful with those promises, Leonardo Reed. I have a very vivid imagination when it comes to collecting favors. On Saturday night, Clara sat in the passenger seat of Leonardo's car, adjusting her gown for the 10th time. This time she had chosen an emerald green dress, elegant but still very her. Nervous? Leonardo asked, noticing how she kept fiddling with the strap of her purse. Me? Nervous? Clara laughed, but the sound came out a bit too high-pitched. I'm just going to meet your entire family, pretending to be your fiancé, in a mansion full of rich and famous people. Why would I be nervous? Leonardo drove in silence for a few minutes before speaking again. My parents are intense. Intense like they ask about retirement plans on first dates, or intense like they hire private investigators to check your background? More like the second, he replied. Clara couldn't tell if he was joking. She watched him as he drove. There was something different in his posture, a kind of tightness she hadn't seen, not even in the most high-pressure meetings. Leonardo? Yes? Why didn't you smile for 20 years? The question came out more directly than she intended. Leonardo almost hit the brakes. What? Everyone at the company talks about it. Leonardo Reed never smiles. You're more likely to see a unicorn than the boss laughing. But why exactly 20 years? Leonardo was quiet for so long, Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, in a low voice, he said, I lost someone important. Clara felt the weight of his words. She had touched something delicate. I'm sorry, you didn't have to. He was my twin brother, Leonardo interrupted quietly. Nathan, we were identical, but he was the opposite of me, always laughing, always making everyone laugh. Clara didn't say anything. She just waited. He died in a car accident when we were 15. He was coming back from a party, wanted to surprise me with some silly thing he'd bought. Leonardo paused. After that, smiling felt wrong, like I was betraying his memory. Clara's eyes welled up. Leonardo. It's stupid, I know. It's not stupid. It's human. But, she took a breath. Do you really think your brother would have wanted you to stop smiling because of him? Leonardo didn't answer, but something in his expression softened. I bet he was the kind of person who made everyone laugh even when he was sad, Clara continued gently. And if he were here now, I bet he'd be joking about you pretending to date the clumsiest employee in the company. This time, Leonardo smiled. A small, real smile. He would have loved you. You have the same questionable sense of humor, Clara smiled back. So when I make you laugh, it's not betrayal, it's remembering. 15 minutes later, they arrived at the Reed mansion. Clara looked out the window and swallowed hard. This isn't a house. It's a small country. The mansion was massive. with perfectly manicured gardens and a circular driveway already packed with luxury cars. "Last chance to run," Leonardo joked, though Clara could see he was nervous too. "And miss the chance to hear whatever embarrassing stories your parents have on you?" "Not a chance." They stepped into the grand hall, which was decorated with white and gold flowers. The guests were exactly what Clara had imagined: elegant, sophisticated, and all of them seemed to instinctively know where the most expensive champagne flutes were. "Leonardo," a warm female voice called out. A graceful woman with silver hair styled to perfection and a radiant smile approached. Clara knew instantly it was Leonardo's mother. They had the same eyes. "Mom," Leonardo kissed her cheek. "This is Clara." "Clara," Eleanor Reed clasped both of Clara's hands with genuine warmth. "Finally, I've been dying to meet the woman who made my son smile again." "Mrs. Reed, it's a pleasure," Clara said, trying to channel her inner elegance. "Eleanor, sweetheart, and let me just say, you're even more beautiful in person than in all those magazine photos." Clara blushed. "You're too kind." "William," Eleanor called out to a distinguished man across the room. "Come meet our future daughter-in-law." William Reed was an older version of Leonardo, serious, but with kind eyes. He greeted Clara politely, but she could feel him studying her carefully. "So you're the famous secretary who won over our CEO," William said. "Technically, I won him over with a song about political cats," Clara replied with a smile. "It wasn't exactly a master plan." Eleanor burst out laughing. "I love it. Leonardo has always been so serious. He needs someone to loosen him up." "Mom," Leonardo murmured, clearly embarrassed. "What? It's true." Eleanor turned to Clara. "Did you know when he was little, he used to give business presentations with his stuffed animals?" "Eleanor," William warned gently, but he was smiling. "I need to hear this story," Clara said, visibly delighted. "He was 7 and held a meeting with all his teddy bears to discuss equal toy distribution in the bedroom," Eleanor shared proudly. "He even made charts." Clara looked at Leonardo, who was now visibly red. "Charts? At 7? It was a phase," he muttered. "It was adorable." Eleanor corrected. "He's always been special, and now he's found someone just as special." Clara felt a sudden pang of guilt. Eleanor's joy was real, and Clara was lying to her face. The night continued pleasantly. Clara mingled with Leonardo's relatives, heard more adorable and embarrassing childhood stories, and even made William Reed laugh with her dramatic imitation of the Japanese investor's accent. But just as she was reaching for a glass of champagne, a voice froze her in place. "What a coincidence seeing you here." Clara turned. There was Victoria, radiant in a red dress that probably cost more than Clara's yearly rent. "Victoria," Leonardo said tightly. "Hello, lovebirds." Victoria's smile was icy. "How's it going? Still playing house? Excuse me?" Clara frowned. Victoria stepped closer, dropping her voice in a mock conspiratorial tone. "Did you two meet in HR or on the set of Make Believe?" Clara felt her stomach twist, but kept her face neutral. "I'm not sure I follow." "Oh, please," Victoria laughed softly. "Do you really think anyone's buying this act? A nobody secretary who suddenly becomes the fiancé of New York's most unattainable CEO?" Leonardo moved forward. "Victoria, I'm just being realistic," she interrupted sharply. "And I happen to have proof that your darling Clara is a professional opportunist. Messages, shady contacts, a very interesting background." Clara knew it was a lie, but Victoria said it with such calm, venomous certainty that even she started to doubt herself for half a second. "You have a choice," Victoria continued, savoring every word. "Admit this little love story is a farce, or tomorrow everyone will know exactly who Clara Bennett really is." Clara took a deep breath and smiled. "Victoria, sweetheart, you're making a lot of noise over nothing. You know what I think? I think you miss Leonardo, and you're making up stories for attention. It's kind of desperate." Victoria's face turned crimson. "How dare you?" "I dare because I have just enough class to recognize unnecessary drama," Clara said, still smiling. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to dance with my fiancé." She took Leonardo's hand and led him away from Victoria, though she could feel his tension radiating through his grip. He was shaken. An hour later, in the car outside Clara's apartment, silence sat heavy between them. "She could be bluffing," Clara said, trying to lift the mood. "And if she's not, then we face it together. It's not like we're actual criminals." Leonardo pulled up to her building, but didn't make a move to unlock the doors or say goodbye. Clara, he began. Leonardo, look at me. She turned to him, eyes steady. It doesn't matter what Victoria does. We're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. There was something different in the air now. The tension had shifted. It wasn't about the lie anymore, or Victoria, or the media. It was something else. Something real. Leonardo was looking at her like he was truly seeing her for the first time. You're incredible, he murmured. I know, Clara said with a quiet smile, softer than usual. He leaned in first. This time it wasn't an accident, not for a camera, not for the charade. It was real. And when their lips met, Clara felt something click, like a final puzzle piece sliding perfectly into place. Moments later, they were climbing the stairs to Clara's apartment, still kissing, laughing, fumbling with keys and shoes and each other, falling into something they couldn't name yet, but didn't need to. That night, for the first time, they didn't pretend. The next morning, Clara woke up to the smell of coffee and burnt toast. She found Leonardo in her tiny kitchen, frowning at the toaster like it had personally offended him. Good morning, she said, voice still thick with sleep. Good morning, he smiled. Hope you like your eggs. Slightly charred. Your kitchen is challenging. Clara laughed, walking up behind him. It's perfect. And for the first time in a very long time, nothing she said was pretend. They spent the entire Sunday holed up in Clara's apartment, eating takeout pizza and watching terrible romantic comedies on cable. It was surreal, watching the most feared CEO in New York lounging on her old couch, laughing at a cheesy 90s rom-com. You know, I've seen this movie like 15 times, Clara said, lying against his shoulder. Why would anyone watch the same movie 15 times? Leonardo asked, genuinely baffled. Because sometimes you need something predictable, something where you know everything's going to be okay. He looked at her with that quiet softness she was starting to recognize. How do you make simple things sound so deep? Natural talent, she said, stealing a slice of his pizza. That and the ability to eat other people's food without guilt. They both laughed, and for the first time in weeks, neither of them was faking a thing. On Monday morning, Clara stepped into the office humming softly. She could still taste the goodbye kiss Leonardo had given her just before they'd split off onto different floors of the building, keeping up appearances. But her smile was completely real. But the moment she stepped into the office, she knew something was terribly wrong. Jessica ran up to her. Clara, did you see it? See what? Jessica showed her phone. The screen was full of angry comments and screenshots of conversations Clara had never had. Clara Bennett, the truth about the gold digger who fooled the CEO. Exposing. Messages reveal a plan to scam a millionaire. Greedy secretary had everything planned from day one. Clara took the phone with trembling hands. The screenshots showed conversations between her and people she didn't know, talking about how to catch the rich CEO and pretend to love him to get his money. The messages looked real, with her pictures and everything. I never wrote this, Clara murmured, feeling the world spin. Jessica, I swear I never. I know you wouldn't do this, Jessica said quickly. But it's everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's gone viral. Clara kept reading. The comments were cruel. Obviously a scam. Nobody becomes Cinderella out of nowhere. Poor man, tricked by his own employee. This woman is an embarrassment to all honest secretaries. Her phone started ringing nonstop. Unknown numbers. Probably journalists looking for statements. Miss Bennett, Margaret showed up looking like she was attending a funeral. The board wants to speak with you. Right away. Clara went up to the meeting room, her legs unsteady. 5 men in suits were waiting, all with serious expressions. Leonardo stood in the corner, visibly upset. Miss Bennett, said Richard Morrison, whom she recognized from previous contracts. I'm sure you've seen the allegations. They're lies, Clara said, trying to keep her voice steady. I never wrote those messages. Maybe so, Morrison replied coldly. But whether they're real or not, they're doing serious damage to the company's reputation. Our phones haven't stopped ringing with worried journalists and investors. Another board member spoke up. The company's stock dropped 2% this morning. We need immediate damage control. Clara looked at Leonardo, hoping he would say something, anything. But he just stood there, silent, with a tortured look on his face. Therefore, Morrison continued, we're asking for your immediate resignation. We also suggest that you publicly end your relationship with Mr. Reed. Richard, Leonardo spoke for the first time. Maybe this is too hasty. Leonardo, Morrison cut him off. You're a smart man. You know this has to be done to protect everything we've built. Clara felt something break inside her chest. It wasn't just the unfairness of the situation. It was seeing Leonardo hesitate, unsure if he should stand up for her. She stood up slowly. It doesn't have to be a resignation. I'll step down, Clara. Leonardo began. It's okay. She forced a smile. Anders, business is business. Clara took off her badge and placed it on the table. Thank you for letting me live my little soap opera for a while. Now I'll go back to being an extra. She walked out of the room without looking back, even as she heard Leonardo calling her name. Margaret ran after her in the hallway. Clara, dear, I'm so sorry. It's okay, Margaret. Clara picked up the few belongings from her desk. It was too good to last anyway. 2 hours later, Clara was back in her Brooklyn neighborhood, carrying a box with her things and trying not to cry on the street. Her neighbor, Mrs. Nancy, was watering the plants. Clara, what's that look on your face, dear? Hi, Mrs. Nancy. Just a change of plans. You're on the news, you know? They're saying you're a gold digger. But I told Harold, that girl doesn't have a mean bone in her body. Clara forced a smile. Thanks for believing in me. In the days that followed, Clara went back to her old routine. She resumed teaching music at the local community school where the kids didn't know her as anything other than Miss Clara, who teaches fun songs. Miss Clara, shouted 6-year-old Tommy. Can you teach that cat song again? Of course, Tommy. Clara picked up the out-of-tune guitar. But today, let's try a new version. How about the funky mayor dog? The kids laughed and clapped, and for the first time in days, Clara was able to momentarily forget the pain in her chest. Meanwhile, across town, Leonardo couldn't focus on anything. He was in his third meeting of the day and hadn't heard a single word. Leonardo? One of the investors called. Do you agree with the proposal? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? That night, alone in his luxurious apartment, Leonardo stared out the window and could only think about Clara, about how she sang out of tune in the shower, how she ate pizza like it was her last meal on earth, how she made him laugh without even trying. He caught himself smiling at the memory of when she called the tycoon Mr. Mustache. And then the tears started. 4 weeks later, Clara was teaching a class when she started to feel strange, dizzy, nauseous, with a weird feeling in her stomach. Miss Clara, are you okay? Asked 7-year-old Sophie. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just need a minute. Clara rushed to the bathroom and threw up. Then she sat there on the cold floor, trying to understand what was going on. The next morning, she was at the doctor's office, nervous. Well, Clara, Dr. Martinez said with a smile, I have news for you. You're pregnant, about 3 weeks along. The world stopped. Pregnant? Clara repeated like the word was in another language. Yes, congratulations. Does the father know yet? Clara shook her head, still in shock. No, I'm not going to tell him. Why not? Clara thought about Leonardo hesitating in the boardroom, the way he didn't stand up for her, the cruel comments online calling her a gold digger. Because I don't want anyone to think I'm doing this for money. I'll raise the baby on my own. Dr. Martinez frowned. Clara, raising a child alone is hard. If the father is a good man, he is. Clara interrupted, the tears finally coming. He's a wonderful man. That's why I can't tell him. Not right now. That night, Leonardo was at home, looking at a photo of Clara on his phone, the only one he had saved, taken during the magazine photo shoot. She was laughing at something he had said, and her smile lit up the whole picture. He closed his eyes and could hear her voice singing. Vote for the cat. He's the king of morale. He meows in the Senate. He's sensational. For the first time in 20 years, Leonardo Reed cried. Not the quiet tears he had shed when he lost his brother, but the deep regret of letting the love of his life walk away without fighting for her. And across the city, Clara placed her hand on her still flat belly and whispered, It's just you and me now, little one. And we're going to be okay. Somehow, we're going to be okay. Leonardo couldn't sleep. At 4 a.m. on Tuesday, he was at the office, surrounded by piles of documents and 2 cups of cold coffee. He had spent the entire night doing something he should have done weeks ago, digging deep into the accusations against Clara. Hiring a digital investigation firm had cost a small fortune, but the results were worth every penny. The message screenshots were fake. Expertly fabricated, but fake. The dates didn't match, the metadata showed signs of tampering, and the digital trail led straight to one source. Victoria. Leonardo looked at the report for the 10th time, feeling a mix of anger and relief. Clara was innocent. She had always been innocent, and he had let her go without defending her. At 8 in the morning, Margaret arrived and found Leonardo still there, looking like he hadn't slept at all. "Mr. Reed, did you sleep here?" "Margaret, call an emergency meeting with the entire board. Now." "Now? It's 8 in the morning. Some of them aren't even in yet." "Call them. Tell them it's urgent. And call our legal team too. We're suing someone today." An hour later, the same 5 men who had demanded Clara's resignation were seated in the boardroom, clearly annoyed at being called in with such short notice. "Leonardo," said Morrison, adjusting his tie, "I hope this is truly urgent. I canceled an important meeting to be here." Leonardo placed a thick folder on the table. "Gentlemen, we've discovered that Clara Bennett is completely innocent." The silence was immediate. "What do you mean?" asked another board member. Leonardo opened the folder and began handing out copies of the report. The messages were fake, digitally created by Victoria Hampton, my ex-girlfriend, in an attempt to ruin Clara's reputation and drive us apart. Morrison picked up the report and started flipping through it. "This is substantial evidence. It's irrefutable evidence." Leonardo corrected him. "You demanded the resignation of an innocent employee based on elaborate lies. More than that, you made me doubt someone he hesitated, someone I love." The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Leonardo, please understand our position," Morrison began. "The evidence seemed too convenient to question," Leonardo interrupted. "And we failed. I failed." He stood and walked to the window. "That's why I'm announcing some immediate changes. First, our legal team will file a lawsuit against Victoria Hampton for defamation, slander, and emotional damages. Second, Clara Bennett will be rehired with a promotion and a significant pay raise. Third, we'll implement new policies to protect employees from false accusations." "And what if she doesn't want to come back?" one of the members asked. Leonardo smiled for the first time in days. "Then I'll have to convince her." That afternoon, Leonardo stood in front of a group of reporters in the company's press room. Margaret had managed to organize a press conference in record time. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," Leonardo began, surprisingly calm. "I called this conference to clarify some incorrect information that has recently been circulating." Cameras flashed as he spoke. "Clara Bennett, who was unfairly accused of being a gold digger, is completely innocent. The so-called evidence against her was fabricated, and we now have conclusive proof of that." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Reed, does that mean your relationship is real?" Leonardo took a deep breath. "It was now or never. Clara Bennett is not a fraud. She's the most genuine person I've ever met. She's funny, smart, brave, and has the rare ability to make anyone smile, even on their worst days." He paused, thinking about all the times Clara had brightened his world. "She's the only person who's made me truly smile in the past 20 years. And yes, I'm completely in love with her." The buzz among the journalists was immediate. Leonardo continued, "If she forgives me for doubting her, I intend to spend the rest of my life proving how much she means to me." The press conference made headlines on every news channel in New York within hours. Meanwhile, Clara was at the community school, trying to teach a group of hyperactive kids how to play the xylophone. The noise was deafening, but at least it drowned out her thoughts. "Miss Clara," shouted 5-year-old Emma, "can you sing that song about the political cat again?" "Of course, sweetheart," Clara forced a smile. "But let's try a calmer version today. My stomach's not feeling too great." Actually, the morning sickness had turned into all-day sickness, and Clara was starting to worry whether she'd be able to keep her job if she kept running to the bathroom every 2 hours. Mrs. Ruth, the school principal, appeared at the door. "Clara, dear, you have a call in the office." Clara walked to Mrs. Ruth's small, cluttered office, wondering who it could be. Maybe the doctor with some test results. "Hello? Clara? It's me, Jessica." "Jessica?" Clara brightened at the sound of her former coworker's voice. "How did you get my number?" I asked Margaret. "Clara, did you see the press conference?" "What press conference?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Leonardo held a press conference today. He said you're innocent, that the messages were fake, and he said he's in love with you." in front of the entire press. Clara's knees went weak. He said, "What? Clara, it's on every channel. He defended you publicly, he sued his ex, and he basically declared eternal love on national TV." Clara sank heavily into Mrs. Ruth's chair. "Jessica, I have to go. Thanks for calling." "Clara, wait." But Clara had already hung up. She sat there in the quiet office, trying to process what she'd just heard. Leonardo had declared his love. Publicly. He had risked his image, his company, everything for her. And she was pregnant with his child and couldn't tell him. An hour later, Leonardo was driving through the streets of Brooklyn for the first time in his life. The GPS had led him to an area he only knew from corporate charity reports. The Esperanza Community School was a low, simple building with an old playground in the yard and a front wall that could use a fresh coat of paint. Leonardo parked and sat in the car for a few minutes, watching. Through the windows, he could see Clara with a group of children, animatedly gesturing while holding an out-of-tune guitar. She was singing, of course. Even from a distance, even through the glass, he could see her passion, her energy, the way the kids adored her. He got out of the car and walked closer to the window. Clara was in the middle of a kid-friendly version of some song she had probably just made up on the spot. The little bird wants to fly high, 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 but first it has to learn. The kids laughed and tried to mimic the sound. Clara was making big, silly gestures, pretending to be a clumsy bird tripping over its own wings. It was the most beautiful thing Leonardo had ever seen in his life. At that moment, Clara looked out the window and saw him. She froze in the middle of the song, the guitar almost slipping from her hands. "Miss Clara?" one of the kids called. "Why did you stop?" Clara quickly looked away. "Nothing, sweethearts. Let's keep going." But her voice was shaky, and Leonardo could tell she was shaken. He went back to the car, knowing he had shown up at the wrong time. Clara needed space, time, and he needed a better plan than just showing up and hoping she would forgive him. That night, at home, Leonardo looked at his phone a dozen times, tempted to call Clara, but he knew he needed something bigger, something special, something that showed he truly understood who she was, what really mattered to her. He thought about the kids at the school, about the way Clara lit up when she was with them. He thought about that silly political cat song that had changed his life. He thought about how to make Clara smile again. And then he had an idea. A completely crazy, embarrassing idea. Probably doomed to fail. Perfect for Clara Bennett. Leonardo picked up the phone and started making calls. He had a grand gesture to plan and only 24 hours to put it all together. "Margaret?" he said when she answered. "I need you to get me a costume. Yes, a costume, and a portable sound system, and maybe some emergency singing lessons. Mr. Reed, are you okay?" Leonardo smiled, imagining the expression Clara would make the next day. "I'm great, Margaret. For the first time in a long time, I'm great." Tomorrow, he was going to win back the love of his life, even if it meant making a fool of himself in front of an entire school. For Clara, it was worth it. The next morning, Clara arrived at Esperanza Community School, still thinking about the image of Leonardo standing outside. He had looked so out of place in that neighborhood, with his expensive suit and imported car, like a prince lost in a fairy tale. "Miss Clara!" shouted Tommy, running up to her as soon as she walked into the classroom. "Are you going to teach us a new song today?" "Of course, sweetheart," Clara said, trying to push thoughts of Leonardo out of her mind. "How about we make up a song about dancing dinosaurs?" The kids cheered. There were 12 of them, between 5 and 8 years old, all children from working families in the neighborhood. Clara had fallen in love with every single one of them. "Dancing dinosaurs?" laughed Sophie, age 7. "They don't have rhythm." "Oh, but you haven't met the Samba T-Rex," Clara replied, picking up the out-of-tune guitar. "He's got the best moves in town." The kids burst into laughter, and Clara started improvising a silly melody about dinosaurs doing dance performances. It was in the middle of the second verse, while she was pretending to tap dance like a brontosaurus, that the classroom door opened, and in walked a giant panda. A person-sized plush panda holding a wireless microphone and a small portable speaker. The kids went completely silent for exactly 3 seconds before exploding. "A panda! He has a microphone. He's gonna sing." Clara let the guitar slip from her hands. She knew that posture even hidden inside a panda costume. She knew the way he walked, even while trying to mimic a clumsy bear. "Leonardo?" she whispered in disbelief. The panda gave a shy wave and turned on the microphone. When he spoke, his voice came out muffled through the costume's head. "Hi kids, I'm the Love Panda. I'm here to sing a very special song for a very special person." Tommy raised his hand. "Mr. Panda, you sound nervous." "I am very nervous," Leonardo admitted, and Clara had to hold back a laugh. "Because the person I'm singing to is the most amazing in the world, and I messed things up with her." The panda turned to Clara, who was still standing there, stunned. "Clara, please forgive me for letting you go. I might not know how to sing, but I know the only song that makes sense now is you." Clara felt her eyes fill with tears. He was really there, dressed as a panda, in front of a dozen kids, ready to make a fool of himself for her. "Leonardo," she began. "Love Panda?" Emma corrected excitedly. Leonardo cleared his throat and began to sing. To Clara's horror and delight, it was exactly the song she had sung on her first day of work. "Vote for the cat. He's the king of morale. He meows in the Senate. He's sensational." His voice was completely off-key. He messed up the lyrics twice, tripped over the panda costume's feet, and at one point nearly knocked over the microphone, but he kept singing with touching determination. "Are you seriously singing my made-up brega funk song?" Clara asked, laughing and crying at the same time. "I am," Leonardo replied, even more off-key. "And I'll keep singing it as many times as it takes until you forgive me." The kids were ecstatic, clapping off beat and trying to sing along. Sophie shouted, "Miss Clara, your panda friend sings worse than you." "Hey," Clara protested. "I sing beautifully." "No, you don't," all the kids said in unison, making Leonardo laugh inside the costume. When he finished the song, Leonardo turned off the microphone and, with some effort, removed the panda head. His hair was a mess, his face red from heat and effort. Then, still wearing the rest of the panda costume, he got down on one knee in front of Clara. "Clara Bennett," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Will you marry me for real? No contract, no lies, no games, just love. True love, the kind that makes you want to sing songs about political cats for the rest of your life." The room fell completely silent. Even the children seemed to understand the importance of the moment. Clara looked at him, this man who had left behind all his corporate dignity to come here, dressed as a panda, singing off-key to a classroom full of kids. "Only if you sing the chorus with me," she said, trying not to laugh. "And rhyme my name with spaghetti." Leonardo panicked for a second. "Rhyme Clara with spaghetti? That's impossible." "Then you'll have to get creative," Clara replied, crossing her arms. Leonardo took a deep breath and began to improvise, still on one knee. "Clara, you're better than spaghetti. Your smile makes me feel, confetti?" The kids laughed so hard that Tommy fell off his chair. Clara couldn't hold it in anymore. She started laughing and crying at the same time, then ran to hug Leonardo, who was still kneeling on the floor in the panda costume. "You are completely crazy," she said, kissing his cheek. "Crazy about you," he replied, holding her as if she might disappear. The kids surrounded them, jumping and shouting. "They're gonna get married. The panda's our friend now. Miss Clara, is he your panda boyfriend?" Tommy tugged on the sleeve of Leonardo's costume. "Mr. Panda, are you really crazy?" Leonardo looked at Clara, glowing in his arms. "I am. Crazy in love with this amazing woman." Clara smiled and whispered in his ear. "For the record, you sing terribly. I know. I'm going to need to hire a singing coach." "You don't need one," she kissed his cheek again. "I like your off-key voice. It's authentic." Emma raised her hand. "Miss Clara, are you guys going to sing in our end-of-year show?" Clara and Leonardo looked at each other. "I think Mr. Leonardo has other commitments, sweetie." "Actually," said Leonardo, surprising even himself, "I'd love to sing in your show." The kids cheered again, and Mrs. Ruth, the principal, appeared at the door to see what all the noise was about. "Clara, dear, what is—" She stopped when she saw Leonardo in the middle of the room, still half-dressed as a panda. Is everything okay here?" "Mrs. Ruth, this is Leonardo," said Clara, trying to stay composed. "Leonardo, this is Mrs. Ruth, our principal." Leonardo tried to stand up with some dignity, which wasn't easy given that he was still wearing the bottom half of a panda suit. "Nice to meet you. I was giving the kids a musical performance." Mrs. Ruth looked at him, then at Clara, then at the excited children. Well, it was certainly memorable. 15 minutes later, Clara and Leonardo walked out of the school hand in hand. Leonardo had managed to get out of the costume and looked like a normal human being again, though his hair was still a mess. "You know this is going to be the talk of the school for at least a year," said Clara. "I can live with that," replied Leonardo, giving her hand a squeeze. "I can live with anything, as long as I'm with you." They stopped next to Leonardo's car, neither of them wanting to break the moment. "I promise to smile every day," Leonardo said suddenly. "Even if it's just to annoy you." Clara laughed and pulled him closer. "And I promise to keep singing off-key, just to make you laugh." They kissed right there on the sidewalk in front of the school, with a few kids peeking through the windows and making ooh sounds. When they pulled apart, Clara held his face in her hands. "Leonardo Reed, you are the craziest, most handsome, most off-key man I've ever met, and I'm madly in love with you." "I love you too," he replied. "More than I ever thought it was possible to love someone." They got in the car, and Leonardo started the engine. He was just pulling out when Clara sighed. "Oh, before I forget, we're going to need a bigger car." Leonardo frowned, focused on traffic. "What do you mean?" "This car has plenty of space for two." Clara took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Because I'm pregnant." Leonardo hit the brakes so hard the car behind them honked in frustration. "You're what?" "Pregnant." 4.5 weeks, to be exact. Leonardo immediately pulled into the first parking spot he saw, which happened to be in front of a candy store. He sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process the news. "Pregnant," he repeated, like the word was in another language. "And before you ask," Clara continued quickly, "yes, it's yours. And no, I wasn't going to tell you because I didn't want anyone thinking I was trying to trap you after all that Victoria drama, but now that you've shown up at my school dressed as a panda singing about a cat, I kind of changed my mind about hiding it." Leonardo stared at her. "You were going to raise our child alone?" "Children," Clara corrected nervously. "It's twins." Leonardo's expression was priceless. His eyes widened, his mouth dropped open, and he slowly leaned back in his seat like he was fainting in slow motion. "Twins," he murmured. "Two babies. Two little people who are going to sing off-key like their mother." "Hey," Clara protested, but she was smiling. Leonardo suddenly sat upright and pulled Clara into a passionate kiss. "This is amazing. It's the best gift I've ever received, better than any contract, any deal, anything." "Really?" Clara asked, relieved. "Clara, I spent 20 years not smiling, not feeling truly happy. You not only made me smile again, but now you're giving me 2 more reasons to smile every single day." He kissed her still flat belly. "Hi, babies. I'm your daddy, and you have the most amazing mommy in the world." Clara laughed, tears running down her cheeks. "Are you sure you're ready for 2 babies who will probably inherit my talent for creating chaos?" Leonardo held her face. "Clara, I've faced hostile boardrooms, tough investors, and Victoria Hampton. 2 babies can't possibly be more challenging than that." "You don't know the Bennett family genetics," Clara replied. "We've been troublemakers since birth." Leonardo laughed and kissed her again. "Then it'll be an adventure, and I can't wait to start." A week later, Clara was standing in the middle of Leonardo's living room, surrounded by boxes, and wondering how she had managed to accumulate so much stuff in such a small apartment. "Leonardo," she shouted, "why do you have 15 remote controls?" His voice came from the kitchen. "Every device has its own remote. Why do you need a dedicated remote for the towel warmer?" "To warm towels?" Clara shook her head, laughing. 3 days living in Leonardo's penthouse, and she was still discovering gadgets she never even knew existed. "Clara, have you seen my toothbrush?" Leonardo walked into the living room, his hair messy and a confused look on his face. "The blue one is in the master bathroom, the white one's in the guest bathroom, and the electric one is charging in the kitchen." Clara replied automatically. Leonardo looked at her, impressed. "How are you more organized in my house than I am?" "It's a natural talent," she shrugged. "Along with my ability to find things you lose every single day." That evening, they had an important dinner. Leonardo had insisted on personally cooking for his parents, which Clara thought was both a sweet and a risky idea. "Leonardo, are you sure you know how to make lasagna?" Clara asked, watching him wrestle with the pasta dough like it had a life of its own. "Of course I do," he replied, covered in flour, even in his hair. YouTube is a wonderful educational tool. Aha! Clara picked up a spoon and tasted the sauce. Sweetheart, you used sugar instead of salt. Leonardo stopped everything he was doing. What? That's impossible. It's possible. And you also used cinnamon instead of oregano. Leonardo looked at the little spice jars in horror. How do you know? Because I have taste buds. And because your lasagna tastes like apple pie. 2 hours later, when Eleanor and William Reed arrived, the kitchen looked like a battlefield, but dinner was saved thanks to Clara's intervention. Leonardo, darling, said Eleanor, kissing her son on the cheek. What a wonderful smell. Actually, Clara saved dinner, Leonardo admitted. I almost served dessert lasagna by accident. William laughed. At least you tried. Your mother spent 20 years trying to teach me to cook, and I still burn water. How do you burn water? Clara asked, curious. I leave the pot on the stove until the water completely evaporates and the pan overheats, William explained, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Clara looked at Leonardo. That explains where the family's culinary talent comes from. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally. Eleanor wanted to know everything about Clara, from her childhood to her future plans. William, quieter, asked a few thoughtful questions, but gave silent approval through his demeanor. Clara, dear, said Eleanor, you've brought a joy to Leonardo that we hadn't seen in years. Mom, Leonardo murmured, embarrassed. It's true. Eleanor turned to Clara. He called me last week just to tell me a joke you made. A joke? Leonardo never used to tell jokes. What joke was it? William asked, curious. Clara blushed. Oh, it wasn't anything special. She said I have the personality of a GPS, Leonardo said, smiling. Always know where I'm going, but never seem to enjoy the ride. William burst out laughing. That's spot on. It was during dessert that Clara and Leonardo decided to share the news. Well, Leonardo began, a little nervous. We have something important to tell you. Eleanor immediately put down her spoon. You're getting married. I knew it. Actually, Clara said, smiling. We are getting married, yes, but there's something else. Something else? William asked. Leonardo took Clara's hand. You're going to be grandparents. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before Eleanor let out a scream loud enough to be heard downstairs. A baby! William, we're having a grandchild. 2 grandchildren, Clara corrected. Twins. Eleanor stood up so fast she almost knocked over her chair. Twins. 2 like Nathan and Leonardo. Oh my God, it's fate. She started pacing around the room, gesturing. I'll need to redo the guest room. No, 2 rooms, and buy 2 of everything. Cribs, car seats, baby clothes. Eleanor, William said, laughing. They're not even born yet. That's exactly why. I need to be ready. Clara, sweetheart, are you taking your vitamins? Eating well? Going to your prenatal appointments? Mom, Leonardo tried. And the names? Have you thought about names? I hope you're not going with any weird modern ones. What about classic names? Edward and Elizabeth, or Charles and Charlotte? Eleanor. William tried again. Oh, and I'll teach them piano. And you, Clara, you'll teach them music. They're going to be a musical family. Clara looked at Leonardo, amused. I think we've created a monster. Grandma mode. Extreme, he agreed. Eleanor finally sat down, but she was still clearly excited. I'm sorry, it's just, I've dreamed about having grandkids for so long. No need to apologize, Clara said warmly. It's beautiful to see how much you already love them. William stood and gave Clara a hug. Welcome officially to the family, sweetheart. 2 weeks later, it was the wedding day. Clara had insisted it be held outdoors at Prospect Park, with the kids from the community school singing in the choir. Are you sure you want to get married in a public park? Eleanor had asked for the 10th time. We can rent the ballroom at the plaza. I want it in the park, Clara had said firmly, with the kids singing, a picnic after and no fuss. Now, standing behind the trees that served as an improvised dressing room, Clara adjusted the simple white dress she had chosen. It wasn't a princess dress, but it was perfect for her. Miss Clara. Tommy came running, wearing a tiny suit that looked absolutely adorable on him. We're ready to sing. Great, sweetheart. Remember, when I reach the altar, that's when you start the song we practiced. The love song, shouted Sophie, arriving with the other 11 members of the children's choir. Clara had written a special song for the ceremony, blending her unique style with something truly emotional. It was about finding your person in the middle of life's chaos. Jessica arrived, looking beautiful in her bridesmaid dress. Clara, it's time. Clara took a deep breath. How do I look? Beautiful. Leonardo won't be able to stop smiling. I hope not. I've gotten used to that crooked smile of his. The music started. It wasn't the traditional wedding march, but Clara's own composition, played by a string quartet and sung by the children. You came as a surprise in the middle of my off-key song. Clara began walking down the improvised aisle between the chairs. Leonardo was at the altar, flawless in his tuxedo, but with that smile she had grown to love. As she got closer, Clara could see tears in his eyes. "You look beautiful," he whispered when she reached the altar. "You don't look too bad yourself," she replied, straightening his tie. Eleanor was in the front row, quietly wiping away tears. Beside her, William was filming everything with his phone. Behind them sat company employees, neighborhood friends, and even Mrs. Ruth from the community school. The pastor, a kind man Clara had met through the school, began the ceremony. "We're gathered here today to celebrate the love between Clara and Leonardo, a couple that proves opposites really do attract." Soft laughter from the crowd. "Clara, would you like to say your vows?" Clara took Leonardo's hands. "Leonardo Reed, when I met you, you were the most serious man I'd ever seen, like museum statue serious. But I discovered that behind that grumpy executive face was someone sweet, funny in his own way, and willing to wear a panda suit for love." More laughter. "I promise to sing to you until we're old and gray. Even if my voice still sounds like a broken printer, I promise to make you laugh every day, even if it's just at my cooking disasters. And I promise to love you exactly as you are, half robotic, totally wonderful." Leonardo was clearly emotional. "Clara Bennett, you came into my life singing a song about political cats and turned everything upside down. You taught me that laughing isn't betrayal, that joy isn't weakness, and that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as total chaos." He took a deep breath. "I promise to smile every day, even if it's just to see you roll your eyes at me. I promise to support your wild dreams, your made-up songs, and your habit of giving embarrassing nicknames to important people. And I promise to love you and our children with everything I have." "The rings?" asked the pastor. Tommy came running with the rings on a little pillow, but tripped and almost dropped them. Clara and Leonardo laughed, and Leonardo helped him back up. "Happens to the best of us, champ," Leonardo said, ruffling the boy's hair. They exchanged rings and promised to love each other in joy and in sorrow, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Leonardo, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was met with applause, cheers from the kids, and a few whistles from coworkers. At the reception that followed, Leonardo surprised everyone by dancing awkwardly, singing along with Clara, very badly, but singing, and even tripping during the waltz, causing a domino effect that nearly knocked over half the guests. "He's not afraid of looking silly anymore," Eleanor whispered to a guest. "Clara did what no amount of money ever could. She brought my son back. By late afternoon, it was time to toss the bouquet." Clara stood with her back to the group of single women. "Ready?" she called. "Ready," they shouted back. Clara tossed the bouquet in slow motion over her shoulder. Jessica jumped to catch it, but it landed in Mrs. Ruth's hands, who blushed like a teenager. As the sun was setting, Clara and Leonardo sat under a tree, watching the kids play in the park. "So, Mrs. Reed," Leonardo said, "how does it feel to be a married woman?" "The same, but with a new ring," Clara replied. "And you, Mr. Reed?" "Happy. Happier than I ever imagined I could be." At that moment, Clara felt something strange in her belly. A tiny movement, like butterflies. "Leonardo," she said, taking his hand and placing it over her still small belly. "What? They're kicking." Leonardo froze, concentrating. Then his eyes widened. "I felt it. I felt both of them." Clara laughed at the look of pure awe on his face. "I think they're excited about the party." Leonardo kissed her belly. "Hi, babies. Today was a very special day. You've got the most amazing mom in the world." Clara held his face. "And you have the most in-love dad in the universe." As the sun set over the park, Clara and Leonardo Reed stayed right there, smiling, feeling their babies move, surrounded by the most unlikely friends and the most loving family they could have asked for. And for the first time in a long time, everything was exactly where it was meant to be. What did you think of Clara and Leonardo's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our stories. And check out more touching tales by clicking here on the end screen.